Yes, that's fine. So I probably should have said that. Our settings are a little different because this is a government Zoom account. And so we're going to actually let people ask their questions in real life. And Lori's going to explain. She's got a little intro where she's going to explain how they're going to. She has a script, yes.
I have a little script that I have to read about.
So just so I know, will people be asking questions while I'm talking and then I will acknowledge them, or how does that work? It's fine. Anything's fine with me. I just would like to know.
Well, I think it's best that we hold questions to the end. Good. And that we can have a real conversation, if you will, with attendees.
Yeah,
okay.
That's great.
All right.
And the thing is in case you decide to do something different, people can raise their hands in the audience during the meeting. And if you see that it looks like there's a lot of interest, you could wait until you get to a natural point and stop and ask some questions and then continue. So it's really up to you, whatever you're comfortable with, but you should absolutely take the questions in, after natural, stopping points in the lecture or at the end. So they either.
And then, Dale, I made 2 screens. One for, are you interested in volunteering?
Oh, thank you, Lori.
With the volunteer service. And then, we could just always say that, or you can call agencies directly, or go to their websites and find out.
It's now 7:00.
Okay.
Have fun.
Good evening. I'm Lori Contadino, the director of the Greenwich Commission on Aging, and it's my privilege to welcome you to a very special community conversation, managing your emotional well-being during COVID-19. I'm grateful to the Commission on Aging Board, our generous sponsors, our dedicated staff, and the overwhelming number of residents that have volunteered their time to assist the Commission on Aging in connecting with over 3,000 older adults in the town of Greenwich to check in on their well-being. This is a Zoom webinar, and it may not be the same Zoom experience that you've gotten used to, but don't worry. You can't see each other, but we can see you. We will entertain questions at the end of the presentation, but you will not be able to unmute yourself. So when you're asked to speak and we invite questions, please locate your raise hand button and press it to be recognized. When you are recognized by name, you will be allowed to speak and asked to unmute yourself at that time. If you've dialed in by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand to be recognized. Once you are done speaking, we will turn off your mic and move on to the next question. So COVID-19 has changed or disrupted nearly every aspect of daily life for everyone, irrespective of chronological age. We're all experiencing what we consider to be loss of the routine that we used to enjoy, getting together with family and friends, coming and going as we please because of the fear of illness due to the virus, the inability to visit loved ones in nursing homes or hospitals, perhaps loss of income, schools closing, and so on and so forth. That's a lot to lose. In the midst of something that seems so overwhelming, where can we find sources of comfort? Dr. Dale Atkins is a licensed psychologist and relationship expert. Her most recent book, The Kindness Advantage: Cultivating Compassionate and Connected Children, was named one of the top 10 books of 2019 by Greater Good magazine and one of the top 10 books to teach kindness by Huffington Post. She has written 6 other books, textbook chapters and articles in popular and professional journals. For over 45 years, Dr. Dale Atkins has focused on women's health, healthy aging, work and family concerns, adaptation to childhood, or adult disability, caregiving, raising kind children, and handling life transitions, and stress while maintaining a harmonious and meaningful life. An active volunteer in our community, she and her dog are certified dog therapy team. She serves on many boards and trains staff of several nonprofit, local, and national organizations and educational institutions that focus on literacy, tolerance, healthy aging, multi-generational family communication, wellness, women's health, child protection, and community action. Dr. Atkins has a private psychology practice in New York City, and we're truly honored to have Dr. Dale Atkins with us this evening. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Dale Atkins.
Thank you so much, Lori. And thank you to the entire Commission on Aging, Steve Katz, who asked me to join you before COVID, before any of this was going on. Thank you to Bobby for her help with all of the marketing and just keeping me in the loop of everything. It's a pleasure to be with you. And clearly, I wish we would be talking about something else, but I'm so glad to be able to talk with you about issues having to do with our emotional well-being while we're going through not only COVID, but so many upheavals in our society as we are watching and engaging. There's so much going on now, and keeping ourselves in as good a balance as we can and trying to keep our finger on our own pulse and taking care of ourselves as we're also, many of us, taking care of others. It's really a lot. So I guess the first thing I'd like us to do is just recognize all that has changed in the last 4 months. And it has to do, you mentioned loss, Lori, and I really am so glad that you did. Because even just the loss of a regular routine, or the loss of going out and seeing friends, or being able to have family come and visit. So much of what we rely on, going to the senior center, doing the Zumba class, going to the market, saying hi to the post person at the post office, all these regular things that we do and often took for granted are now not part of our regular life. So one of the things that's really important to do is to have, if we can, have some kind of a routine and a schedule so that we really don't lose sight of, as I often do, what day is today, and so that we can kind of keep track of where we are. I know that the presentation is going to really focus on 3 areas, and I just want to reiterate those. And if from time to time you notice my eyes moving to another screen, it's because I have some notes with me, and I just want to try to be sure that I cover as many of the things that I had prepared. So really what we're going to highlight are about 3 things, and the relationship between positive social interaction and our well-being, and also how that's a factor in healthy aging. The second is we're going to explore ways of connecting to ourselves as well as to others that really contribute to strengthening our minds and our bodies and our emotional well-being and our spirit during challenging times. This certainly is a challenging time, but many of us have gone through challenging times before. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is resilience. And so one of the things I'll ask you about is, when were you challenged before? And what was it about your being, your resources, your inner resources in particular, that you drew on? And how did that help you? And what are those that worked helping you now? And how have you kind of re-examined those that didn't work so well? You thought might have worked, but they're not working. So how adaptive are you to changing? How flexible are you to thinking of new ways, maybe taking risks, to get through a time that's challenging, but different from what you went through before? And then the third area that I'd like to talk about with you tonight is the whole area of thinking out of the box and having practical suggestions for ourselves, for our families, for our friendship circles, for our community, where we can really implement what Lori so brilliantly refers to as no adult left behind, particularly as we start opening up more and going into phase 2. There are many of us who are not going to be coming outside. There are many of us who are still not going to be leaving our homes and our apartments. And so how can we connect with other people, whether or not we are leaving our apartments? And how can we, or our homes, and how can we connect with ourselves and grow and find the richness and what many people are saying is the silver lining to all of the things that are going on? So I'd like to really begin with that first piece, and it has to do with the relationship. And I know that many of you are aware of this, but I just thought that I would reiterate it because it is so important. And it is that social isolation and its converse, social relationships, are correlated with biomarkers of good health. So what we want to do is understand why isolation is bad for us. And even when we are isolated, how we can still connect and have social interactions. Because we may be physically disconnected, but we do not have to be socially disconnected. And I know that many of you who are listening tonight and participating are people who are reaching out. You are volunteering and you are connecting with your neighbor who you might not have really known very well, but perhaps during this time, you're checking in on each other. And when you go to the market, you might ask, what can I get you, and bring and leave in your garage or leave outside your door. Or maybe you're just noticing that there's some beautiful flowers in your garden and you're cutting them and you're dropping them off for someone who you know is living alone. These are the kindness acts that really help us to stay connected even when we are isolated. And there's another issue that has to do with an inflammatory factor, which is interleukin 6. And this is implicated in age-related disorders such as Alzheimer's and osteoporosis and rheumatoid arthritis and some cancers and cardiovascular disease. And positive social well-being, and again, whether you're with someone in person or not, but positive social well-being, these kind of interactions that are really enjoyable and bring us a laugh or bring us a feeling of comfort or safety and just connection, these are really associated with lower levels of this inflammatory factor of interleukin 6. So that's an important thing to remember. And I think the other thing is that when we're isolated, we don't have to be lonely. And there's a real difference between loneliness and isolation. It's a fine line. And many of us now are lonely. We're lonely for people we love. We're lonely for a routine we had. We're lonely because we're not having a conversation on a regular basis with a real person. And loneliness may have physical and emotional impact. And it's often related to elevated blood pressure. And loneliness is also connected to depression. So we need to be very careful for ourselves and also the loved ones in our family and extended friendship circle of how we are connecting with people who are alone and lonely. And one can be lonely living alone. One can also be lonely living with others. So the issue of how we feel when we are with other people is really, really important. So we want to be sure also that even without COVID, as many people get older, often they focus, and I'm saying they, but it's we, focus on the losses in their lives. And it could be the way we move. It could be, the decline of our physical health. It could be the losses of friends, of family, the losses of what we're used to, the loss of a job. It could be any of those things. But now, if we add to that what's going on with COVID, there are many, many other losses. Some of the people I'm sure who are listening have people in their lives who have had COVID-19. And maybe some of the people who are on the call have had it. If you have anyone in your life who's in a nursing facility, just the idea of the added risk is something that gives us a worry. So how we manage worry and how we manage concern and how we manage our stress, very, very important elements to getting through this. And one of the things that I think we need to pay attention to is what makes us age well. And one of those things is connection with other people, adaptability, learning, constantly keeping our brain engaged, and not only learning, but learning new things, doing things we enjoy, taking care of ourselves, having meaning in our lives, and feeling that we have a purpose, and being creative. So these, interestingly, are some of the same factors that when we tease out what makes a resilient person, these same elements. And then you throw in self-awareness and you throw in compassion to yourself, self-awareness, who you are now, how this is affecting you. Don't push it away, welcome it. Because when we understand how we feel and how we're processing whatever we're going through, we can then deal with it better. If we put it away and say, oh no, I shouldn't be thinking this way, right? Why am I feeling sad, or why am I feeling this? We have to welcome it, and then we accept it, and then we examine it, and we move through it. This COVID-19 experience and everything that's going on in the country is an opportunity for us to grow, an opportunity for us to transform, to change. It's in every possible way we have to change. We have to change our routine. We have to change how we take care of ourselves. We have to do more exercise. Whether or not you can go outside, we must do more exercise. Everyone focuses on keeping our brains vital, and that's very important. Exercise is one of the most important gifts you can do to keeping your brain vital. It's also important, particularly if we're inside, is to move. And we can move by doing yoga. We can move by doing chair yoga. We can move by doing laugh yoga, all of which, by the way, I recommend highly. We can move by stretching. We can move by walking around our home, or perhaps if we have a patio or outdoor access, we can do it by moving mindfully. And by that, I mean not going from here to there and wondering how you got there, but being very conscious about how we move. And this is something that really helps us and keeps us engaged. It keeps us engaged with our surroundings. It keeps us engaged with everything that is part of our life, engaged with all of our senses, because most of us cannot get outside on a regular basis and really hear the wind and smell the air. We need to do things that will activate our senses to really keep us engaged and motivated and involved. So if we're about to eat a strawberry, instead of popping it right in our mouth, notice it. Look at it. Look at where the seedlings are. Smell it. Enjoy the aroma. And then when you put it in your mouth, chew it gently and feel what happens. Feel the liquid. Feel the textures with your tongue. And then enjoy it. This savoring and having an experience is a mindful way to go through your day. So it doesn't matter whether you're eating, whether you're showering, feel the water. Be in the moment that you're in. Be present in this moment, whatever's going on. And pay attention to all the things that are happening. Keep your finger on your own pulse. Be aware of something that might have upset you. Is the news on all the time? I really hope not. Maybe you're listening or watching the news in the morning and the evening, but not before you go to bed. And not first thing when you wake up. Because the news cycle, as important as it is to be informed and certainly find out what we need to do as a society to be safe, is also a news cycle that is promoting that which is kind of like an explosion, the explosion of the news. And generally, it's not great. Generally, it gets us agitated and we worry and we can become anxious. So one of the things that's important to do is to find the balance. And for each of us, it's different. And not get addicted to the news. because sometimes when we listen to the news, we think, oh my goodness, I just heard this. And then 10 minutes later, oh my, and now I heard that. And then I heard that. And I'll miss something. No, what you'll miss are these bits of explosions, which agitate our brain and cause us to have much more cortisol, which is the stress hormone, released in our brain, which agitates us and then makes us more fearful and more anxious. So one of the things that we can do to take control of that is to pay attention, say, see how we feel before we watch the news, then watch the news and see how you feel. And pay attention. I will share with you that when I watch the evening news, as soon as I'm finished, well before I go to bed, I turn on Channel 13, which lately, that's PBS, which lately has had some Broadway musicals being broadcast. And I have a trip down memory lane and I kind of go to Broadway. And it doesn't matter if I watch the whole show. I can just sing a song from The Sound of Music, which I did the other night, or Kinky Boots, which was last night. And it totally changes my entire being, because instead of cortisol flooding me, I'm flooded with endorphins, which are painkillers, and the feel-good hormone, which are the same chemicals that are released when we do kind acts. So all of us who are doing kind acts for other people, including ourselves, and I'll talk about that a little more when we talk about self-compassion, are giving ourselves an opportunity of releasing endorphins. And when we do this, it makes us want to do more kind acts. When we think about what we're grateful for, when we look at those silver linings, we are releasing endorphins. It makes us feel good. When you laugh, when people send you those funny little dog videos, open them up and watch them and laugh. Or if you like Carol Burnett, find Carol Burnett on television and watch her old shows. Whatever makes you laugh. Our bodies do not know whether we're laughing for real, and if you're watching Carol Burnett, of course you are, or whether we're making ourselves laugh. All our bodies know is that, oh, laughter, I think I'll release some endorphins and you will feel better. So after watching the news, pay attention to how you feel and see if you can pivot. One of the most important qualities about developing resilience during challenging times, and I said it before, is adaptability. And what does that look like? How do we see what's in front of us and pivot to be able to get through whatever these challenging times are healthfully? You are not saying that you are disconnecting from what's happening in the world when you turn down the volume of the news or turn off the images. What you're saying is, I'm going to take care of myself in a way that the next time when I engage with the news, I will be ready to take in and not be overwhelmed. Because again, what is the balance? And you may find that certain times of the day are better. You may find, as many of my friends are finding, that they cannot watch the news, but they can read about the news and they can engage with podcasts and they can find alternative ways of becoming informed and staying informed while being healthy. So I think that what's important to remember is this overall image of how we want to be healthy. And we're still talking about social relationships and why they're so important. And the social relationships have to do with exercise. For those of you who are engaged technologically, which all of you are because we're doing this now, maybe you take a Zoom class, an exercise class, or you do a meditation online with so many of the teachers who are available now, or you attend a church service or a synagogue meeting online, and you discuss a book. We'll talk about a bit more of those later, but this is socially engaging. It's not the same as being with someone in real time. It's not. You can't smell them. You can't touch their hair, but it's better than nothing. And it's a whole lot better than texting or email, because there are studies, you may know of them, of people well before COVID who were getting texts from family members or were getting phone calls from family members. And I bet you can figure out which people recovered and had higher scales on happiness measures. They were the people who had the phone calls, the people who heard another voice, who could get the texture of a human being And that's what we need to do now. Phone calls are up, fortunately. And my concern is, what's the quality of the phone call? I encourage people, when you're on the phone, to not just touch base, but to have what I call a conversational hug. Everybody's missing hugs, but we can have a conversational hug. We can ask someone about what's going on with them specifically. What's concerning them today? And listen. Or what was a really wonderful thing that's happening? And listen. We can also offer, I forgot to tell you, or I'm not sure if I told you enough, when we took that trip 15 years ago, and we did this together, I remember that and I think about it so often. And you know what I learned on that trip from you? I learned how you have to be patient, because when we were waiting for those perfect shots and with our cameras, I would have walked away, but you waited and waited and waited, and you got that perfect shot of the sunset. What that does, it affirms the other person. It gives them a reason to believe that they made a difference in someone's life. And it also gives them the sense that there is a connection with someone. When we're alone, when we're frightened, when we are anxious, we wonder whether or not anybody remembers us, or what was I really doing here in the first place? Meaning. Our lives have to have meaning. And when people tell us what they've learned from us, or the wisdom that you've given them, or just how much they admire you for the following reasons, the person who's receiving that, by the way, gets a flood of endorphins. So the person who's saying it does, the person who's receiving it does. And by the way, I'll just tell you this, even if you're watching someone do an act of kindness, or read about it, or hear about a hero, you're going to get it too. And you're going to get something called moral elation. There's no downside for being kind and having empathy. So now, when we are thinking about how can we connect with people, I'm really asking you to try to understand what this other person's experience is. If you're living with 5 people in your house, your experience is different from somebody who's living alone. Maybe they don't have a dog or a cat. They're just alone all the time. So rather than try and say, oh, are you doing this? And are you doing that? And are you doing this? Maybe they really just want this human connection. And maybe you are the only human connection they're having. One of the things I think so wonderful about what the Commission on Aging is doing is pairing people so that they are calling and having that connection, that human voice, whether it's intergenerational or peer, to be able to know that you are important, that you're not forgotten, and to do it in any way that you can. One of the other things that I always love when people do is they'll be online together and they'll look at photographs and they'll kind of tell a story about what they remember about whenever that photograph was taken. And it's amazing what people remember. And it may not be what you remember, but that then leads to a story. People need to have their stories told and remembered and listened to. So if you have an intergenerational situation, it's a great time for grandparents to be able to share stories with their grandchildren about their lives, about what it was like when they went to school and where they went to school and who were their teachers and who do they remember? Or if they lived through the war, what was that like? Where were you? Things like that. Now is the time to share stories and to write your own stories. I think that, when people say, oh, I'm not going to write a novel now. No, but you can write stories. You can write about stories about your life and you can share them with people or just have it like an extended diary. I think what's important is for people to write about their experiences now, to just get a notebook or to open a file online and to just write down this day, what was important to me this day? What did I learn about myself this day? What am I grateful for this day? And we could have 4 months of them already. And you might notice a pattern. You may notice who you really liked talking to or who brought light into your life. And speaking of light, what are we shining our light on? Are we shining our light on the things that are only negative and that we don't have? Certainly there's time for that. And I actually recommend for people that sometimes they can put like a little worry time together and they can just worry 10 minutes. This is my worry time. And it's very helpful when you have anxiety, by the way. And then at the end of the 10 minutes, You say, and now what am I going to do about that? If there's something I can do, oh, I might have to let go of it because I have no control over it. And then focus on what you do have control over. One of the other elements of resilience is understanding what we have control over and how we can release it and what we can control. And focusing on what it's like to live in so much uncertainty. So what we eat is very important. I know for so many people, food uncertainty is a real issue. So be sure that when you check in with people, you find out what kind of food they're having and whether you can help them find sources for food that they need. It's an important time to eat very healthfully if you can, and to make choices that are really good for you, because it affects the way we think, it affects the way we move, it affects the way we sleep. And these are really important factors when we're thinking of how socially connected we are. I think that it's also important to understand how flexible we can be. We can learn new things. We can engage with new people. And these are really, really important because the coronavirus has led to so many disruptions and so many moments of mourning and grief that we need to honor those. And heaven knows, whoever thought that we would be going to Zoom funerals? I mean, it's bizarre, but we are. So rather than say, oh my goodness, this is impossible, I can't believe this, or we can say that, then we say, was there something good about this Zoom funeral? And I will share with you that the first one I went to was very early on. The mother of a friend of mine passed away, and my friend didn't want to have a Zoom funeral. And she was advised to do it because she was advised that it would help her with closure. And it was so incredible because what happened was everybody could see up close and personal who was speaking. Everyone could listen and really feel the emotion of the people who cared about her mother. And then she chose to speak, and she shared all these wonderful memories. And all of us, all over the world, were there and were listening and were supporting her. And I understood she was flooded with emails and stories about her mother that she really was able to receive. So no, it's not the same, but it's better than nothing. And I think one of the things about this period is getting used to the phrase and kind of embracing the phrase, good enough and better than nothing. You know, if you're working from home, you're likely not going to be doing the same thing that you usually did, and you're probably not going to have the same productivity because this coronavirus has contributed to our being very confused, being distracted, being incredibly fatigued, and just having concentration that is not what we used to have, being interrupted by lots of different things, taking on roles that we never thought we would have, and then trying to do it all that we used to do. We don't have what we had. So why should we expect ourselves to be who we were in the same way? This allows me to segue into kindness and self-kindness and compassion. So when I talk about self-compassion, I'm really drawing on the work of two people in particular. One is a teacher whose name is Sharon Salzberg, and the other is a teacher whose name is Kristen Neff. Both of them have a lot of resources on the net, and I suggest if you are interested that you look them up. I'm going to ask you to participate in something with me, and the first is actually an exercise in self-compassion. And again, remember that it's kindness to oneself. So that means, among other things, shutting off the critical voice in your head and understanding that this is really difficult and allowing it to be difficult. Yes, we're so lucky we live in Greenwich. Yes, we're very lucky. Many, many, many reasons why we're lucky. We also, however, may be having a hard time, and it's okay. So you must recognize that and give yourself some kindness and give yourself the understanding that, yep, this is hard. This is, and I don't like this very much, and that's okay. And then when you are able to say that honestly and not try and talk yourself out of it at this moment, you can also say, you know what? I'm not the only person who's going through this, which connects us not only with people that we know, but all of these other people in the world. There is this shared humanity. We are all connected. And it's important to remember that when we're alone. We are all connected. The entire world is trying to deal with this coronavirus thing. So when we realize we're not alone, we feel a bit more comfortable. And if we were to do a brain scan, we would notice that you became a bit more relaxed just by recognizing that, gosh, this is really hard. And gosh, I'm not alone. And the second or the third gosh is, how can I really comfort myself? And how can I mindfully recognize that I need a hug? So that in my case, I might say, you know what, Dale, you just need to take a breath. And you'll notice that I put my hands here reflexively because this is my heart and I want to soothe my heart. And I just want to hold it. And I want to talk to myself as if I were talking to my 6-year-old granddaughter. I won't be harsh. I'll be loving. I'll want to give her a hug. I'll want to make her feel safe. I'll want to make her feel that any feeling she has is okay and that we're going to get through it together. And that's the voice I'd like you to use when you are giving yourself compassion. Not the harsh, critical voice that you may have had in your head forever. Not that voice. There's no room for that voice here. There's no room for unkindness. We don't have a lot of bandwidth right now. Everybody's really close to the edge. So you want to fill in the spaces with gentleness and tenderness and kindness. When you put on hand cream, you don't just put it on like this. You savor it, the word I used before. You feel your body. You give yourself a hug. So that's kind of the essence of the self-compassion. And now I'd like to ask you to do something with me, which is called a loving kindness meditation. And I'll refer to it later, but I'd like you to understand that the first and most important element of what we can do for ourselves is to be kind to ourselves, to give ourselves space, to give ourselves opportunity to do what we love, to listen to the music we love. Maybe we download the playlist of songs that we had in our cars when we were driving around when we were 20. Whatever it is, do it. For me, it's watching Broadway musicals. It may be rereading your favorite books. It may be joining a virtual book club. As I said before, it may be writing your story or writing a novel. Or maybe it's joining a history discussion group. Whatever it is, be kind to yourself. And at the moment when you may not be feeling 100%, we can breathe. We can always breathe. So I'd like you to breathe with me. And this is one exercise. It's called loving kindness meditation. I'd like you to breathe with me. And I don't care how you're breathing. You don't have to breathe 3 in, 5 out. Just to let you know, it's generally better if you have a longer exhalation because that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and it helps you to relax immediately. So if you do breathe in a few breaths, try to breathe out a few more, but right now, it's okay. Any way you want to breathe is fine with me. So I would ask you to breathe. If you're comfortable closing your eyes, feel free to, and just listen to my voice. So let's take a deep breath together. Feel yourself on your chair or your couch. If you're lying down, just feel yourself in space. Take a nice deep breath through your nose. And if you have trouble breathing through your nose, your mouth is fine. And then exhale. And just let your mind come into feeling the breath coming in through your nostrils or your mouth. And just focus on the breath. And your mind will wander someplace else. Just say, okay, come on back. Don't chastise yourself. Just bring the mind back. Say hi. And take another breath. Take a nice deep breath. And feel the oxygenated air come into your body. And notice as you exhale that you're relaxing a little bit. You may wish to put your hand on your heart. You may wish to put your hand on your belly. And feel your belly go out when you inhale. Let's do one more. Inhale. And exhale. It's a very good way to try and relax. I'm going to ask you to do that again and to listen to my voice. As you inhale, please say this to yourself. May I be safe. And then exhale. May I be healthy. And then exhale. May I be happy. May I be at ease. And just say that to yourself. You can kind of rest your breath on the words. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I be at ease. And now, if you'd like, keep your eyes closed and bring in someone else from your family or a friend or someone who you just see from time to time. Visualize them. Maybe they're having a hard time. May Susan be safe. May Susan be healthy. May Susan be happy. May Susan be at ease. And just sit with that for a moment. And when you're ready, open your eyes. You might have a bit more clear vision. And what you've done is you've centered yourself. And by the way, this is such an effective, it's called loving kindness meditation. And it's so effective to ground us and to connect us and to remind us that we are not alone and that we have the capacity and the power to stay connected no matter where we are. I do this with children a lot. They love to say it. I don't say with them, may I be healthy. Sometimes I do this. I say, may I be strong. And if you're not feeling particularly strong, may I be strong. And as far as health, may I have the health I need to get through this. May I have the strength I need to make the right decisions. May I be content so that I can be happy with my lot. We can interpret it in any way. But the point is that we are compassionate with ourselves, with others, and that we listen to ourselves and we listen to others. Being considerate to others is one of the most important things we can do right now. And as I said before, to help others, because we don't know how everybody is struggling. I mentioned before that I would like to talk a little bit about connecting to oneself, and that's exactly what I just demonstrated and asked you to do. And to also understand how important it is if you have a spiritual connection, if you have a religious affiliation that you find helpful now, call on it. And call on it in ways that are meaningful to you. Perhaps there's a prayer that you remember that you used to say when you were a youngster, and maybe it comes up to you. Or maybe there's a Bible story about someone who inspired you. Or whatever it is, call upon it. Because when we are quiet within ourselves and we just sit, we will find what we need inside of us. And we have so many resources. So many resources. We have such a deep resource for joy. But if we cloud it over with being so worried, we can't access it. We have a right to be worried. We have a right to be afraid. But if we're there all the time in that space, we then shut off the access we have to joy, to noticing, to mindfully walking through and noticing a flower and paying attention to the gardens. We can take a course. I will share with you that I live in a place blessed with so many birds. I spent my whole life wanting to learn about birds. I signed up for an ornithology class online, and I'm learning a lot about my bird neighbors. And I'm feeling so comfortable with that. I'm not going to be an ornithologist, but I like being able to recognize and look for the birds in my area, and it makes me feel good. I'm not going to be a Broadway singer, but I can tell you that I love belting out the songs that I hear, and it lifts my mood. I want each of us to be able to find the spaces and the places inside of us that bring us joy and remind us that we are alive and that we will get through this. And it's not instead of paying attention to the sadness. It's in addition to it. And when we pay attention to the sadness, we're more likely to go through that and say, okay, now what do I need? Now I need a bath, or now I need a walk, or now I need to call my grandchild, or now I need to play with my dog, or now I need to make my favorite banana bread, whatever it is. But we access it and then we do it. I think it's important to focus on what we're grateful for. As I said before, there are many studies that show that when we write down things that we're grateful for on a regular basis in most of the studies, they're 5 weeks, we notice that a person's whole mood shifts and that they become much more grateful for other things and they become much more connected with other people because they no longer focus on the things that are lacking, but they focus on the things that they have. Important to acknowledge and express our feelings and to really decide every day what we are going to do to face life challenges. And the last area has to do with the practical suggestions. I've given you some, but I really want to be very specific. I mentioned exercise, I mentioned food, I mentioned the spirit, I mentioned connecting with other people. I really want us all to find sources of comfort, and some of which I spoke about. It could be watching a really fun Netflix movie, or watching a comedy series, or lighting candles with a scent that you enjoy. Lavender, for instance, is very helpful in reducing stress and inducing sleep. Chamomile tea, sipping a cup of chamomile tea before we go to bed, or just to relax yourself, can be very, very helpful, as can soaking your feet in warm water, helps you to get into a deeper sleep. If your sleep is agitated, as many people's sleep is now, try not to fight it. And when you wake up, say, I see that I'm awake. I think I'll try and go to sleep, and do a progressive relaxation. By that I mean relaxing your feet, tensing and relaxing your feet, tensing and relaxing your muscles in your legs, tensing and then relaxing your muscles in your body, tense in your trunk, and all the way up to your head. And then you breathe. You just tense and relax, and always come back to your breath. What's important about sleep is the relationship we have with it. If we get up and we say, oh no, it's 3:00, I'll never go back to sleep, that's probably going to happen. But if you say, oh, 3:00, here we are again. What do I need to do? Well, maybe you'll read. Hopefully not on a Kindle, because we really don't want to have the screens, because the LED light is not really very useful for us and actually disrupts sleep. We could listen to some soothing music, or maybe a guided relaxation or a meditation. We could listen to someone who inspires us. I'm kind of in favor of a lot of really nice music. But whatever works for you, you can do that. You can do bird sounds. You can do nature sounds. Create something. This is a time to be creative. Channel your energy into something that you may not have done before. It could be painting. It could be drawing. I've taken to making cards. I like to make cards because I love to receive cards. And rather than go to Papyrus, which is not open, or at least if it's open, I'm not going, I'm making my own cards and I'm writing letters to people. I can't tell you how many lovely responses I'm getting. The art of letter writing is having a resurgence. And I think what's important is to be connected to people, for grandparents to write to their grandchildren and again tell a little story or a quote that they like, and for the kids to get something in the mail is really lovely. And if you're a younger person watching this, you might want to also remember that people love getting mail. Writing in a journal every day, and writing, maybe some people are taking to writing blogs. Some people are starting to write poetry or haiku. And I mentioned about short stories and your own stories. As far as painting, I'm not an artist, but I will tell you, one of the things that I've loved and many people are loving now are these adult coloring books. Many of them have meditation themes, and it's so calming and quieting to be able to mindfully pay attention to what might be a complicated picture, but you choose whatever it is, the texture, the color that you choose to put into it. I think that taking up a hobby like jewelry making, putting together a photo album, I'm working with someone now whose two granddaughters are graduating, and this woman is making the most incredible gift for each of her granddaughters, and she's highlighting different times of their lives with photographs that she had from their entire childhood, and she's writing inspirational messages next to them, and she's going to present it to them for their graduation gifts. They have no idea what she's doing, and she's working on it day and night, and she's loving doing this. Home projects, if you want to clean your closets or you want to reorganize something, now's the time, obviously. I think it's important also to distract ourselves and to have things that are healthy distractions. So it could be watching shows, it could be all the things I mentioned, but obviously doing activities that really are interesting to you, gardening both inside and outside. I recently learned that when you finish eating your lettuce and you just cut it off at the bottom and put it in some water, it will sprout some roots, and out of the center will come a whole new head of romaine lettuce. So I'm very busy growing my own salad in my windowsill. And I never knew that before. I also never probably wanted to take the time to recognize that. By the way, you can do that with celery. So you can listen to audiobooks and, again, give yourself a reading challenge. I know so many people who are rereading their favorite books and the classics, and they're having such a good time. And some of them read them in real life, and now they're listening to them on audiobook. I think what's important also is to watch TED Talks or listen to podcasts about things you've always wanted to learn about, but you didn't take a course in it. Well, you can take a course, an online course, or you can watch a TED Talk. And I think mixing up your day with things that have to do with screen time or technology in general, creativity that does not involve screen time, movement, rest, eating healthfully, eating slowly, eating sitting down, not walking around or standing up, television on, television off, and really trying to stimulate those senses, as I talked about before, are really very important. I think it's also important to understand that our brains really have to keep functioning. So if you're doing puzzles, do more challenging puzzles than you did before, because the way to really get those synapses firing is to do new crossword puzzles, ones that are a level up. If you're doing, if you're, let's say, taking a course, take a course. If you know all about French art, maybe you want to go into depth with a course at the Louvre, which is online and free, by the way, or a course at the Guggenheim if you want to learn more about American art or whatever. Whatever it is, take what you know and go a little deeper, because the joy of learning something new is really inspiring. And it's all accessible. And then you can talk to people about what it is you've learned. Or maybe you're taking a course with a friend who's doing it at his or her house, but you have something new to talk about. And the last thing I'd like to mention is to make a list for the future. We will get out of this. We will move beyond it. And so think about what you'd like to do, who you'd like to see. Order online so that you can plant some new bulbs next year. And make a new bucket list with places that you might like to see, or things you might like to do, or things in Greenwich that you'd like to learn about. And make goals for some area of your life. So I ask you to keep a schedule, to stay informed, to stay active, to do something meaningful and creative, and to engage yourself with family and friends and meet new people. Write to people. Give them conversational hugs. Pay attention to what you're watching and how much you're watching, and ask yourself if it's good for you. And do that with your thinking. Is this thought good for me? Is what I said going to help? Was what I'm about to say going to help this relationship? Take yourself seriously and value this time as a time of opportunity to grow, to change, and hopefully to change for the good. So I'd like to stop my comments now and ask if you have questions or comments. I know there are many of you who would like to offer your comments, and they don't have to be in the form of a question, because anything that's been working for you positively please share, because the more people who can offer a support network, the better we all are.
Wow. Thank you, Dale. So remember, if you have a question, please use your raise hand function or hit *9 if you've called in and are using a telephone. And I will do my very best to identify who has a question. Okay, so I don't see a raised hand as of yet. But I'll tell you, Dale, that I honestly don't know where to begin on that incredible list that you helped us build. Just phenomenal. And what I was feeling before we started and how I feel now are two totally different senses of calm, that I can handle this. Look at all of these things I never even thought of because I'm so busy doing and being, and I wish that I had time to clean my closets out. And I want to thank you for that. And I'm going to continue to check to see if there's a raised hand. And yes, Lise Jameson has a question. Go ahead. And
thank you so much. That was so interesting, and I'm so glad that I'm doing some things right.
I'm
Not all, but some things.
Thank you.
You know, we're really focusing a lot on the pandemic, but quite frankly, I am just as overwhelmed with Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
And you know, clearly a lot of stuff that you said is, you know, pertains to that, you know,
Yes.
limiting your TV watching, limiting this. But quite frankly, I think as a white person, it is incredibly challenging and hard for me to be supporting my Black brothers and sisters. And it's just such a painful time because I can tuck into my little white life in Greenwich, Connecticut, and that's not possible for a lot of people I love. And so I realize that's a big old question, but
No, it's a very important question.
I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Thank you for asking the question. Are you Lise or Lisi?
I'm Lise.
Lise. Thank you for the question. And it's interesting because when when I was thinking about my remarks, I knew that I was supposed to stay to COVID, and it's the reason that I also mentioned about what's going on. And I think that what's important is that we recognize how our hearts are broken as we watch what's happening in our country. And to your specific point, being safe when other people are not, and recognizing how things are being torn apart. How can you be of service? Well, one of the things, I think that's what you're saying, and how can you be connected when you're far away physically and also in the way one lives one's life. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one of the things, I think the loving kindness meditation, by the way, is one of the best things one can do on a regular basis to really connect and send that out into the universe and to really sit. I will share with you that I am very, I feel very strongly in the power of prayer and the power of energy. And that when we are unable to be with someone physically, that we can still be connected. So that's, I think, something that we can do that may have some positive effect. It certainly has a positive effect on us to make us then be open to what else can we do. Today, I spoke with a friend of mine who lives in a much more integrated community than Greenwich, and she goes to a church that is very integrated, and she is starting a book group specifically for literature that has to do with the literature that now is coming to prominence. And I mean, there are lots and lots of books and movies and shows, but particularly books that are addressing how, in particular, white people can have a window into the lives of, as you say, so many of our Black brothers and sisters. And I think that that's a place to start, to become more, quote, educated, but it's not even educated. It's empathy, to become more aware. I spoke about being self-aware. If you're self-aware, you are then much more willing to be aware of someone else's situation and someone else's plight. And I think that that's important. The other thing that I think is really important, well, a couple of things. To speak out and to speak up, and to not let comments that may be not ill-intentioned, but really are offensive, even if they're not ill-intentioned, and to understand and to say, this is offensive to me and this is why. And to open a conversation that's going to be uncomfortable. The conversation with ourselves is an uncomfortable conversation. To look at our own assumptions just because we were raised in the way we were raised. No one who is white, I don't think, can understand what it's like to the minute they go into a store be followed just because they're not white. I mean, it's a life experience that we don't have. We can have other life experiences when we felt we were under scrutiny or whatever, but we're not going to have that life experience. But we can listen and we can validate that other person's experience, even if we didn't have it. And I think to stay connected and to stay engaged is very important. To pay attention to what is being taught in schools, to pay attention to what is what policies are, to question. I think this is an unbelievable opportunity, an unbelievable opportunity. If we blow it, it's on us. We cannot blow it. I think it is incumbent on white people to step up and understand that there is racism in our society, and there has been for hundreds of years, and we must help to change this society. And I think that when we put our heads there, we will find ways where we can be helpful. But we have to listen, we have to ask. A good question is, how can I be helpful? What can I do? What do you need from me? And also to notice in our own society, in our own neighborhoods, in our own lives, what literature has to be included so that children understand American history as it is, rather than as it was taught when I was in school. I hope that addresses your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lise. Do we have any additional questions? Oh, we do. Allison Morris.
Hi, Allison.
You can unmute yourself, Allison.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can, yes.
Okay, great. I've been dealing really well with the whole COVID insulation from the world and everything. I have friends, people have been, we see each other and social distance, etc. But I have a chronic disease, and because of the medicine I take and because of COVID, the medicine couldn't get to me on time, and I've become really ill from not taking the medicine. So I finally got what I needed in, but it's going to be quite a while until I have control over my pain and stuff again.
Yes.
How do I, like in the middle of the night, when I'm sort of getting afraid and feeling like this will never end, how do I control the pain I'm feeling right now physically, and emotionally not feel like terrified that I'm not going to get better fast enough to deal with life again?
And I really appreciate your question, and I'm sure that your question resonates with a lot of people who are listening. Just personally, I'm glad you got the medicine.
I did. Yeah, it's much it's slowly getting better, but it's not going to be better for at least
A long
3
time.
weeks, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have a sense of when it might be better.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important element of my answer. There are many people who have no idea if or when they'll get better. You have a sense that you can get through this.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's one piece. The second piece is to recognize, and I'm actually glad I did the self-compassion meditation, because to recognize that you're in pain and that this is really hard and that you don't have to be a brave soldier is very important. And that you can cry if you need to. And you can curl up in a ball if you need to at 3 o'clock in the morning. And when you do that, you will be able to unroll yourself, because at that moment, that's what you need. And then you'll be able to say, number one, I know when you do that, when you recognize that, there's more of a likelihood that you'll be able to say, okay, I know that there is going to be light at the end of this tunnel. And it's really hell right now, and I'm really in pain. And there are meditations for pain. There actually is some very interesting research. You might want to look up a man named Jon Kabat-Zinn, Jonkabatzin, a meditation teacher of long standing who actually brought mindfulness to its to where it is right now, as far as being so much a part of our culture. And basically, it's when we can calm our mind and focus on our breath, our perception of the pain changes. It's remarkable. I can speak from experience. I had a very, very, very significant back issue. I never thought I would get through the pain for months and months and months. And I've been meditating for probably 35 or 40 years, but I never did it in the way I did then. And it helped me. Did it take away the pain? No. Did it soothe my experience? Yes. And in those moments where there was a difference in the quality as well as the quantity of the pain, I was able to distract myself. Because when I was in excruciating pain, I couldn't distract myself. But when I was able to move a bit, I was able to listen to music. I was able to engage with visual stimuli, which I couldn't before. And I think that what's important is to try these different techniques, these different methods, and also to focus on the breath and to say to yourself, yes, this is really a 10 on the scale. This is really excruciating. Let me try and breathe, if you can breathe. If you can't, if breathing is part of the difficulty, then there are other things that we can do. And I'd be happy to share some time with you offline if that would be helpful. There are also, I found, and I also often say this to people, I found and I find that what can also be helpful is looking at other people's life stories who have dealt with really difficult illnesses. One that comes to mind is An Anatomy of an Illness by Norman Cousins, who kind of put laughter into healing. He was given months to live and he lived 26 years because he decided he wasn't going to hear any bad news. This is a simplification. And he started watching the Three Stooges and all kinds of funny videos. And he laughed at least 30 minutes a day while he was in the hospital. Nobody knew what to do with him. This was in the 70s, by the way. And nobody knew what was going on, but they paid attention. And now we see what was going on, that he really was changing his brain. Jill Nolte wrote a book about her stroke, My Stroke of Genius. Jill Bolte Nolte, or Jill Bolte Nolte, I don't remember. And she wrote about this massive stroke that she had. She's a neurologist, by the way, and how she totally lost all function and how in 9 years she recovered. And the sensitivity of how she worked with her left brain and her right brain once she was able to work through this can be very, not just inspiring, but instructive. there is a wonderful book about a woman whose friend gave her a terrarium with a snail, and she couldn't move, and she just watched the snail and the relationships that she had and how she wrote about her healing and having to stay in one position for a long time. These are other avenues to be open to without denying our own suffering. And I think that for so many people, we, myself included often, we say, oh, it's not that bad, or it is. When we say, yeah, it's really bad, and I wonder if I'll ever get out of here. I wonder if it'll ever change. That goes into the fear place. And I think that what we need to do is go there, say it's okay, and then come out of there. But if we don't go there, it's going to be gnawing at us.
Right.
And sometimes we fall down the rabbit hole, but sometimes we just kind of dip our toe in and we recognize ways to get out.
Right, right. You know, I'm normally very active physically, and it's been just hard for me to not be able to do as much as I normally do. And it's a little scary, I guess.
Yes, it is scary. And I think recognizing the fear is very important. And saying, you know, you did that before, and likely you'll be able to build yourself up. I don't think it's important to say, don't worry, you'll be right back to where you were. None of us know that. But we can say by taking care, by being patient, by loving yourself through this, by making it okay to recognize your fear, I will get through this and I will be able to do much of what I did before, maybe all of it, but I'll get there.
Right, right.
And I think that trying to have hope and optimism is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I feel lucky, like you were talking about earlier. I feel really lucky. But on the other hand, you know, this is just at times a little scary.
Of course. And though, you know, I often say we have two hands.
Right.
One is to hold the luck and one is to hold the fear. And the challenge is, how do we kind of put them together and not let, you know, and recognize them both?
And I mean, usually I can laugh about it all, but there are times when
But there are times that you can't.
Feeling too.
And those times, like right now, you can.
Right.
So recognize the times you can, but don't make yourself laugh at the time you can't.
Right.
Be real.
Right.
Okay?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Allison. Our next question is from Steve Katz.
Hi, Steve.
Steve, can you unmute?
I unmuted myself. How are you, Dale? How's everything?
Well, Steve, I have to thank you publicly in front of all of these people, because I would not be here without your invitation. And I thank you so much for having me here. So, hi, what's your question?
Well, we appreciate you being here, Dale. You know, my question is, you know, as we're kind of opening things up and kind of, you know, things are slowly, you know, trying to somewhat get back to normal. What I've kind of been noticing as I go around town is people are kind of, you know, and I talked to you a little bit about it, you know, kind of gauging, you know, where they are in their kind of risk versus reward, so to speak,
Yes.
right? You know, and you have people that, you know, some people kind of want to get back into things, and some people kind of are very hesitant to get back into things. And some people, you know, may feel peer pressure to get back into things, you know, because they don't want to feel like they're missing out on something, right? Their friends may be returning to do things, but they may inherently feel unsafe about it, especially older adults, because they're the most vulnerable and at risk. And sometimes they may go out to do things and they may find themselves in a situation that's not safe. Maybe people really aren't social distancing, you know, when they should be social distancing. And I guess my question to you is, how do you suggest people navigate this? Because it's a little bit, you know, kind of strange. Like it's not something that, you know, normally in a regular time, you know, you can control things more and you don't kind of feel this, you know, this unsafety and unsureness of yourself. But at this time, it's a little bit odd. And I'm just curious if you had any suggestions to people about all this.
I really appreciate that question, Steve. And I think it's very, very important. And as you say, as we start opening up more and more people are coming out, how you respond to what's going on is very personal. One of the things I didn't say, and I can't believe I didn't say it, so I'm so glad you asked the question. Each of us has an inner voice. Whether we listen to it regularly or not is up to each of us, but we each have that inner voice. So one of the reasons that I actually like to have people sit and be quiet is so that they can hear that voice. And all that chatter that's going on quiets down, because you keep saying, speak to you later, and you come back and you say, what do I need to do in this situation? I would say that we all know what we're supposed to do in the situation. And what we need to do is get the ability and the language to be able to share it with people in our lives. So that if someone says, you're fine, you don't have to worry, you don't have an underlying illness, and you've been self-contained and all of this, and you're not comfortable, and go to dinner. Don't be silly. There's gonna be space, but you're not comfortable for whatever reason. I suggest that you say, it's me, but I'm just not ready. I'm just not comfortable. People do not have to defend themselves. People do not have to explain themselves. And all we need to do is say, I wonder if I'd feel comfortable in that situation. I can share with you that I was with my grandchildren. We do 6 feet distancing. We put our masks on, and we were outside in the yard, and I took my mask off and I was far away. And then when one of my grandchildren came over, I got a little anxious and I put my mask on. Now, did I have to? I don't know, but I did because I felt I needed to. As we open up, most of the people who deliver things to the house have masks and gloves, but some of them don't. And I always say, thank you. I'm so happy. Would you mind leaving that over there? I'm not comfortable with your not having a mask. Now, I will tell you that took me weeks because I wasn't comfortable saying to somebody, I'm not comfortable that you don't have a mask. But I think we just have to do what we are comfortable doing. There may be an assumption that you're just going to come right along. And I think what's important is to say, I'm not that comfortable yet. And having a time frame, even if you don't know the time frame, I'm not there yet. Look, we all hope that we will be able to be wherever there is. I mean, is there going to be going to, a concert? Personally, I can't see myself going to a concert for I don't know when. Certainly not before there's a therapeutic and not before there's a vaccine, but that's just me. I think that no one needs to know your whole health history if that's the reason that you don't, if you had a respiratory infection a year ago and you don't want to put yourself at risk, you don't have to share your medical history with everybody if you don't want to. You can if you want to. But I guess I'm suggesting that we don't have to be on the defensive. Each of us has to be our own advocate. Each of us has to be able to develop a sense of ourself where it's okay if someone else isn't happy with our choice. Now, you're going to get a lot of personality differences. I want to be a people pleaser. They're going to be angry at me. They're going to think I'm crazy. It's all possible. But I think this is temporary. And I think we say, for now, I'm just not ready. For now, I'm just not that comfortable. For now, and who knows, maybe I will be next, whatever. But right now I'm not. And I need to listen to myself, because I will tell you that if we don't listen to ourselves and we have this worry voice that's going on 24/7 anyway, it will become so loud and we'll become so afraid and we will look at things with such anxiety. What's the point of doing whatever you're going to do because you're not going to enjoy it? Now, if you're at the point where you want to start taking a risk and stepping out of your comfort zone, do it in a way that's going to be comfortable for you. And only you know what that's going to be. So if you want to go to a friend's house, and they're having a party, maybe you're not going to be comfortable. But if you want to go to a friend's house and it's just you and someone else, and you're sitting and you bring your own food or whatever it is you need to do, that might be the way you start. We have to be creative, but we must be creative from the point of what works for us and our families. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that does, and that's one of the points that, you know, I'm very glad you raised all of those. I'm actually, you know, personally hoping that, you know, when people start saying, if they say that they're uncomfortable, that becomes, you know, frankly, for lack of a better term, the code word for others to have understanding.
Yes, yes. And you don't have to push anybody. You don't have to question. So, oh, okay, what could we do to make you more comfortable? Okay. Well, I'd be more comfortable if we sat outside rather than sit inside. Okay, we can do that, right? I would be more comfortable if I brought my own picnic.
Mhm.
Okay, let's do that. I mean, what is the point of the thing? Is the point of the thing to be together with friends? Or is the point of the thing to eat somebody else's food? Is the point to walk arm in arm? Or is the point to kind of be in each other's space and visit? I think that, look, none of us, I don't think, have ever experienced anything like this. It's totally new territory. So we take one route, it doesn't work, we take another route.
Yeah,
So
no, I
it's
think
empowering also, isn't it? It's very empowering to the individual to decide, you know, what's right for themselves at any given time,
Absolutely.
regardless of whether it's something different is okay for other members of their household as well.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for your question, Steve. Dale, do we have time for 2 more questions?
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much. So I can see that BB has a hand raised. BB, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I can. Hello, Dale. This is your friend, cousin, nephew, family member, Barry.
Hi, Barry. How nice. Welcome to Greenwich.
And I apologize to Lori for doing BB. I didn't realize I was going to do this, and so I was just being lazy. Great to see you.
Thank you. How nice to see you.
Well, I wish you could see me, but maybe one day in person when we all feel
Right.
comfortable enough. So there are a couple of thoughts I have, and I actually wrote you on your Facebook post.
Oh, thank you. I haven't seen them yet.
Basically, the overall concept is about community.
Yes.
But I had a thought when you were talking about breathing and meditation.
Yes.
And so I'm just going to read what I wrote.
Thank you, Barry.
Because I'm a little jittery now. I'm not as fluid with doing this as you are. First thing I wrote was, it's too serious of a talk to have. I wish you would have included Samson. So that's a little
Samson
family.
is my dog, and he was going to be here.
Okay. So the first thing that I wrote was, many thoughts came to mind while listening. One I wanted to share was about painting and meditation. I knew long ago when I was painting of the incredible therapeutic aspect of the process as it relates to deep meditation. And now it's a reason why I'm considering picking up the brush and paints again. I haven't really figured out how to approach that. I don't want to do it in a mindful way. I want to do it in a, well, that's probably not the right word. I want to do it in a way which is the antithesis of my writing, which is keeping everything at the forefront. I just want to be free. So a friend of mine who's a painter did a, you know, almost like a semi-abstract, like a Mark Rothko kind of painting, which is highly different from what I do. But I just wanted to state that when one does paint, or at least when I did, and this is why I think it's helpful for me, everything goes away.
Yes.
I'm floating. I'm floating. And so when I was younger and actively painting, I'd start painting after dinner. Next thing I knew, the sun was coming up and off. I had to go to one of my freelance assignments. So that's just one thing. And I want to set it aside because I still want to get to community.
Yes, thank you.
The other thing is, as you know, and I have no qualms sharing it, I am a cancer patient. And I am being treated at NYU Langone Perlmutter Cancer Center. I go there, I feel love all the time.
Yes.
And I'm going to start to cry now because I feel so blessed and realize how utterly important it is to have that support. I have it with family and friends to varying degrees, and that's where I want to get into community. But when I walk in the building, from the Black elderly woman, Angela at the seat, or Quentin, the greeter, or any of the nurses, or even my oncologist, the minute we see each other, we hug. I instituted that. I don't let them off the hook. However, my oncologist, who's of Indian descent, was kind of smiling at me the first time I saw him in April, because he knew we couldn't hug.
Yes.
And I said, you can smile, but I'll get you. Don't worry. The time will come.
Yes.
So the thing about community that I wanted to ask you about is, I'm blessed to have, some family members and friends, and I have Helga here, as you know. So I'm good in that way. And now that the virus came about, my whole mindset has changed a little bit because I'm high risk, considered high risk. So for example, when they shut down the hospital, Helga wasn't allowed to go to appointments and I had to go myself, and we had to drive in and do all that kind of stuff. But I'm noticing, and this is the crux of what I'm getting at, I'm noticing that a lot of old friendships have gone by the wayside. And it's not for any other reason other than the fact that I've come down with metastatic cancer. So I guess what I want to get at and have you, talk with me a little bit about is, what is that about? I realize there are people that, it's going to bring back memories, of a lost parent, when you were young, and on and on and on and on and on. And I'm trying to figure that out along with figuring out getting it into the public. So on Memorial Day, a week ago, there were the flyovers of the jets, the Blue Angels. I, without thinking, went to the water near the Verrazano Bridge and watched them fly over my head. Unfortunately, my pea brain, I stood up to take a picture. I hit the off button instead of the shutter button. So I didn't get the picture, but I was out there. And it wasn't until I was walking away that I felt shook up, like I really screwed up and made a mistake. And then I'm talking about with friends now. There are certain friends that have gone by the wayside. And I don't know how to reconcile all that, because these are friends that are as dear as brothers. But suddenly they just don't know how to cope. I think I'm coping fairly well considering everything, but I'm not coping with the fact that I've lost some of these tight, important relationships. I can go on, but I'm going to stop because I think I've gone too long.
So let's look at it. First of all, thank you for sharing about your illness, but also for sharing about your art. For those of you who don't know, Barry actually is a wonderful artist. I want to mention a book that recently came out by a friend of mine called Janet Slom, and it's called The Mindful Path, An Artful Path to Mindfulness, An Artful Path to Mindfulness.
Okay.
And it's wonderful. It just came out actually last week. And it's really about how art can be a vehicle to go deep and make really important transformations. And it really isn't a book for artists. It's a book for people who want to just use art as that medium.
Sure.
As far as the community, it's interesting. Most people, and it's changing, I think, but so many people just don't know what to say. They don't know how to deal with their own feelings about loss or impending loss. They are often very uncomfortable when someone dear to them becomes sick. And they don't understand how their presence, how valuable and healing their presence is if they could be present. And by being present, I really mean being there in a way that is for the other person. There is great wisdom in recognizing that when we are really there for someone, we're not there. I mean, we're just there for them to be able to lean on. When you were speaking, I was reminded of when my father was ill. My father had Alzheimer's, and he got Alzheimer's when he was quite young. And he was a very social person, and everybody loved him. And he was a businessman in the community, and he was a charitable guy. Everybody loved him. yet no one really visited him when he was sick. People visited my mother, but as he declined, and I was enraged. My dad's been gone 25 years. I've gotten through the rage, and I understand it. And so much of my life was then dedicated to trying to help caregivers and work with people who had Alzheimer's. My point is, Gary, that it's not different from what you're saying. Some people can't bear the thought of what illness is about. It's kind of like when someone loses a child and the friends don't talk about the child because they can't bear it. It's their worst nightmare that they might lose their child, and they can't go there. So they figure if they don't talk about it, maybe it'll be okay. If they don't see you, they don't have to be reminded of the challenge and their own pain and sadness. And they don't realize that they might be able to be helpful to you.
Yeah.
I think that that's one part of it. And it's a very long discussion. I mean, I actually do seminars on this, but I think the more important issue is about you. You're talking about how fabulous it is when you walk to the hospital and you get hugged and you're loved and you feel the love. That love is as powerful as the chemotherapy. And there are people who have, there are studies that are done, and you may know them, people who have a very loving and effusive team of healthcare workers with them, and those who have people who are stone-faced and just business as usual. Who gets better faster? Okay? Not the stone-faced. Now, these are, by the way, tough studies to do. It's one of the problems we're seeing now. All of these caregivers, all of these doctors, nurses, and all of the people in the hospitals who are in these hazmat suits and who cannot connect with their patients in ways that they want to. It's so hard. I loved when people were going in and they had pictures of themselves because the patient couldn't see their faces, but they had pictures of their faces right here so that they could be seen by the patients.
Right.
We have to have that connection. My advice, you're not asking my advice, I'm going to give you my advice. My advice is to temporarily take all the love that you're getting from all of these new people and all of these people who are helping you in your life now, and take a bath in that and try to have and send loving kindness to the people in your life with whom you shared a lifetime, with whom you cared and went through everyday situations and grew up together, because I think they're suffering that you are suffering. And they can't get through their own suffering in order to be available to you. They can't access their empathy in a way that could be helpful to you and healing to you.
Right.
And if you spend your precious energy trying to figure it out, I think it won't be helpful to you. I think that right now you can maybe have some ritual where you put them on hold and you remember, and you maybe light a candle and you say, you're still in my heart. Right now, however, I need to take care of my heart, and this is not taking care of my heart. If you can access the good memories without all the pain, that would be great. Recognize it, be aware of it, acknowledge it, and move through it, because you don't have a lot of wiggle room right now.
No, everything you're saying, I mean, it's a home run. And the analogy you made, to the first responders and the doctors and everything, I just started tearing up when you said that, because it's a really, really strong analogy. I was born an empath, so I'm working through it. I want you to know, on a personal level, I'm okay. I really am. I'm not sitting and ruminating about those people. It's just a curiosity to me.
But let me, I appreciate that. I also want to make one other comment about it. It's part of the fabric, okay? Mm-hmm. Everything that's going on is part of our fabric of who we are. And you cannot pretend that thread is not in the weave. It is in the weave.
Right.
The question is, does it become the prominent color, or does it become kind of the background color? It's still in there.
Sure.
It's we who choose, as I said before, how we shine the light on it. It can be a really big part of that weave, and maybe sometimes it is. Or we can put it in the background. So thank you for the call. I know that when Lori asked me if we had time for 2 more calls, there's another one, but I wanted to, and also wish you continued traveling towards your wellness.
Thank you. I think I'm going to give you a call just to talk a little bit in person, just to see
You're
how
welcome.
you're doing and
I
so
would
on.
love that. I would love that.
Be well and love to everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, BB.
Barry.
Barry, thank you. I saw a hand up earlier, Igel Gershman, and I just wanted to check in and see if he still had a question to give him the opportunity. And if I pronounced your name incorrectly, I do apologize. Igel, can you unmute yourself?
Is this Igal?
Igal?
Maybe we lost him.
Jenny, can you help unmute?
I think Igal has to unmute
Can you hear me?
themselves. There we go.
Igal,
Hi.
we can hear you. Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Atkins, was very nice to listen to you. You're very educated, and it was enjoyable to hear you and to understand you.
Thank you.
Point is the corona hit all of us, and you said before we have to think positive. It's going to go away sooner or later, and then we're going to be a normal life.
No, I didn't say that. If I said that, that was not, I don't think it will go away. I think we will get a therapeutic and a vaccine, and I don't think there will be a normal life. Someone else used the word normal life. I think we don't know what the new life will be like. It will be a different life for all of us. And that's how I believe we will be transformed by this. And each of us will have a new normal. My new normal isn't going to look like your new normal. Work isn't going to be the same. Nothing's going to be the same. So I really appreciate that you framed it that way, because I so don't believe there's going to be the normal life. And I think that people set themselves up for disappointment. I think we have to see, I wonder what this is going to look like when there will be a treatment. I do not think, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, God willing, there'll be a cure, but I would just pray to God that there's going to be a treatment for people who get it and a vaccine that we can take to hope that we don't get it. But until that happens, I personally am going to be very hesitant about how I re-engage. So thank you for saying that. Now, please ask your question.
Okay, what I want to ask about it is, I agree with you, it's never go completely. We're always going to be afraid to hug each other somewhere or to sit next to each other, and we have to continue wash your hand all the time. I know it's going to happen. My point of this now, I'm afraid from worse than that. Maybe it's going to be Corona number 24. Maybe it's going to be civil war in America. The way that I see the country moving, I just worry about everything else, not just the Corona now. So
Yes.
that's the problem now. How I can not to think of the worst and think more positive. I'm just maybe a little negative person, but put me in the line to be more positive in the future.
What a wonderful question. We are born with what's called a negativity bias. And what that is our brain is wired to be very alert for problems. And it's evolutionary because, you know, if a tiger is running towards you, you have to be alert that, oh my God, I think I'll sit here and I'll look at that tiger and see the teeth, or I think I should run away. So we are aware, and then we learn from that. Oh, there's that tiger. I shouldn't hang around. Same like when we eat something. If we say, oh, I ate that, it was terrible, I'm going to know the next time. So we have this propensity, because it helps us survive, for negativity bias. But we also, and this is really important, we are also hardwired to be kind, to be resilient, to be compassionate, and other traits as well. However, we have to intentionally practice them. We have to intentionally shine the light over here. We recognize that there is a possibility that we will have COVID for the rest of our natural lives. And that there's a possibility that with everybody going out too soon and not wearing their masks and doing all these things, that we will have another surge. That is a possibility. And I don't know, I'm not a scientist, as I said before, but looks to me from what I see, maybe a probability. We can either stay in that place of fear, or we can recognize it and we can say, how can I live at this moment healthy, happy, strong, safely, and at best at ease? And what do I need to do? Well, what I need to do is I need to pay attention to what's here right now, the good stuff, the gratitude. What am I grateful for? Yes, this is all happening, but wow, I was able to have a conversation with my sister yesterday and we really had a great talk. Or I was able to play with my dog, or I was blah, 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 all these things. So that what we try to do is we try to stack, it's like you have weights and you put, this is the weight that's really heavy. And this is the, oh my God, it's COVID. This is the weight that is all the things that make us comfortable, that make us safe, that make us happy, that make us appreciative, that make us joyful, that make us content. And we intentionally have to work at putting those in there. And the best way to do that, the best antidote for fear is kindness. When you help someone, when you help yourself, when you help someone, you get out of your own troubles and you are connecting and you see something positive, which triggers your brain. And instead of releasing the cortisol, it releases the endorphins, it releases serotonin, it releases oxytocin. That's the love hormone. It releases the anti-pain hormones. It just changes your brain. Igal, our brains are incredibly plastic. In other words, there's plasticity. We can change the neuronic pathways in our brain. And the way we do that is by practicing certain types of behavior, certain types of thoughts, certain types of the way we look at things. And we train ourselves. And yes, one can become optimistic. One can become less fraught with anxiety. One can actually change one's attitude. It is the most incredible thing. And we know this because we have functional MRIs that take pictures of brains, and you can see how people's brains change when they do things that intentionally help them become more compassionate, more kind, less fearful, less anxious. It's just incredible. So with practice, we can do this. And with practice, we can stay very negative. Because if we still keep swimming around the pool of, oh my God, it's awful, and then watch hours and hours and hours and hours of devastating news and do all of these things, that's the way we'll see the world. We can control that in great part. We cannot change the world. Well, we can change the world, but we can't change what's happening with COVID. But we can change the way we perceive. We can perceive whether something will become traumatic for us. There can be a traumatic event, but we can determine whether we will be traumatized by it for our lifetime. And we learn about these things from people who have survived the most horrible, horrible, horrible things in life. Some people get through them with life, with meaning, with joy, with love, with open heart. How do they do it? They're resilient, and they work on intentionally looking at things through a different lens. Barry said before he was born an empath. Some of us are born more empathic than others. Some of us are born more compassionate, but we all have it. The question is, how do we nurture it?
Right. Thank you very much. You did a good job.
Thank you, Igal.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Dale, I just want to remind you that you had requested 2 slides, just as a reminder, one to speak about volunteering,
Yeah.
and the They're about the importance of masks, and it's up to you as to whether or not
Let's put them up.
let's put them up. Okay, you've been so generous with your time. I just want to make certain.
Let's put them up and then we'll go to sleep.
No Broadway songs? Aren't we going to sing a little bit before you go?
Broadway.
Okay.
I hope that our time together tonight helped to inspire you to try to do something else. And I'm sure many of you are for so many people, but to understand that we will feel better when we help other people. And there are lots and lots of ways in Greenwich to be of service. And, you know, some you don't even have to go out of your house. You can call somebody on a regular basis and make that person feel that they are important and learn something from them. You can maybe help deliver food. You can just check in on people. There's so many ways to do it. And it's really important. You got my bias before about the importance of wearing a mask. There are masks. If you don't have a mask, the Commission on Aging will provide you with a mask. They will deliver you a mask.
Mhm.
So the greatest gift of kindness, is to wear a mask, because you are protecting your neighbor. You are protecting the person that you are walking next to. And whether you're sick or not, you don't know how vulnerable they are. And maybe they are staying in, but they had to go out to get something. And they're really nervous about going out. And if seeing you without a mask makes them feel more anxious, why contribute to somebody else's anxiety? Just wear a mask. It's really easy to do. It's not comfortable, but it's a whole lot more comfortable than knowing that somebody else might be getting sick. And if we are in this together, we really do have a responsibility to help each other. You know, the Dalai Lama talks about compassion, and compassion he describes as a verb. Compassion becomes compassion with action. So we can have compassion for someone, but what are we doing to alleviate their stress, to alleviate their suffering? We can all do something. So I thank you for your time. I thank the Commission on Aging for asking me to join you. And I really appreciate your questions and your comments. And if you want to get in touch with me, my website is www.drdaleatkins.com, which is DRDALEATKINS. And my email is dale@drdaleatkins.com. So it's dale@drdaleatkins.com. And I wish you all safety, health, happiness, and ease through this time. And it's nice to have been connected with you tonight.
Thank you so much, Dale. Thank you. And good night, everyone. And thank you all for tuning in to us this evening. Good night.
Good night.